My name is Lauren, and sharing this story feels like opening an old wound I've tried to ignore. It's something I've kept locked away, too complicated to explain to anyone close to me. But maybe writing it down will help me make sense of everything, or at least release some of the weight it carries. It began last summer when my brother and his wife asked if I could watch their son, Ryan, for the weekend. Ryan had just celebrated his 18th birthday. He was bright, polite, and easy to talk to, the kind of young man who could hold a room with his warmth and curiosity. I said yes without a second thought. I imagined 2 low-key days filled with movies, snacks, and casual conversations. The first day was exactly that, uneventful and comfortable. Ryan and I spent hours in front of the TV, laughing at ridiculous comedy sketches and chatting about life. It felt so ordinary that I didn't think twice about what the weekend would hold. Looking back, that ordinary calm feels almost surreal, knowing how quickly it unraveled. The following morning started quietly. Over breakfast, Ryan mentioned he was planning to meet up with some friends for a few hours. I nodded, happy to have some quiet time to myself. After he left, I retreated to my bedroom, leaving the door slightly ajar, and spent the morning scrolling through social media. Eventually, I found a light-hearted show to watch, hoping to brighten my mood. What happened next was entirely unexpected. I was lost in the rhythm of my lazy day when the door opened without warning. I turned, startled, to see Ryan standing there, holding the doorknob as if unsure of what to do next. "Lauren, I forgot my keys," he said quickly, but his expression carried something deeper, hesitation, maybe confusion. I felt my face flush with heat as I instinctively reached for the blanket to cover myself. "Ryan, you should knock," I said, my voice shaky with embarrassment. His eyes darted away and he muttered a soft apology. "I'm sorry," he said, barely audible, before stepping back and closing the door. The moment passed, but its imprint lingered. The rest of the day was marked by an awkward silence. Ryan avoided making eye contact, and the light-hearted ease we'd shared the day before was replaced by an unspoken tension. That evening, as we sat in the living room, I felt the weight of what had happened pressing down on us. I decided to address it directly, hoping to restore some normalcy. "Ryan," I began, choosing my words carefully, "about earlier, let's just forget it happened, okay?" He nodded quickly, his face carefully neutral. "Yeah, sure," he said, but the stiffness in his tone told me otherwise. I thought that was the end of it. But over the next 2 days, I noticed subtle changes in Ryan's behavior. He lingered in the kitchen when I cooked, sat a little closer on the couch, and found excuses to be near me. His glances stretched a beat longer than usual, and his tone carried something I couldn't quite place, an undertone of nervous energy mixed with something more. One evening, as I was drying dishes after dinner, Ryan approached me. There was a tension in his movements, like he'd rehearsed this moment in his head but wasn't sure how to follow through. "Lauren, can we talk?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with apprehension. I set the dish towel down and turned to face him. "Of course. What's going on?" For a moment he seemed to struggle with his words, then finally spoke. "I can't stop thinking about what happened," he said, his cheeks flushing pink. "It was just an accident," I said quickly, hoping to diffuse whatever tension he was feeling. "There's nothing to dwell on." "It's not just that," he said, taking a small step closer. "It's more than that. I feel like I can tell you anything, like you're the one person who truly understands me." His words caught me off guard, leaving me at a loss. "You're someone I trust completely," he continued, his voice growing softer, more intimate. "But I think I might feel something more than that." I stared at him, stunned into silence. Ryan was my nephew, and this admission was as shocking as it was unsettling. Yet, in his vulnerability and honesty, there was something that made the moment feel undeniably real, dangerously real. I couldn't deny the pull I felt. It was wrong, unquestionably wrong, but ignoring it felt impossible. "Ryan," I said softly, my voice barely steady, "this can't happen. You're my family." "I know," he replied, his voice cracking with emotion, "but I've never felt like this before." I placed a hand on his shoulder, hoping to ground us both. "We have to set boundaries. Whatever you're feeling, it's not something we can act on." But words alone couldn't extinguish the tension that lingered between us. Ryan's presence became a constant reminder of the complicated emotions swirling inside me. Even as I tried to focus on my own life, he remained ever present, through messages, visits, and the weight of unspoken feelings. One evening, my phone buzzed with a text from him. "Can I come over? I need to talk." I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, but against my better judgment, I replied, "Okay." When Ryan arrived, his expression was serious, his emotions simmering just beneath the surface. "Lauren," he began, "I know you said this isn't right, but I can't stop thinking about you. You make me feel understood in a way no one else does." His words hit me like a wave, but I stood firm. "Ryan, this isn't about what we want. It's about what's right." "Then why does it feel so real?" he asked, his frustration spilling out. I had no answer. Deep down, I wondered the same thing. But I knew these feelings couldn't define us. Over time, we worked to regain a sense of normalcy. But it was fragile at best. Every glance, every moment we were alone, carried an unspoken charge. Ryan's honesty forced me to confront my own emotions I wasn't ready to admit. My marriage to Mark had been strained for years. He was consumed by work, leaving little room for us. The emotional void between us grew wider with each passing day, and I felt myself retreating further into the space Ryan seemed to effortlessly fill. One night, while Mark was away on a business trip, Ryan texted again, "I need to see you." I stared at the message, torn. My reply was firm, "Not tonight. It's too complicated," but his response was immediate. "Please, I'll keep my distance. I just need to talk." Against my better instincts, I agreed. When Ryan arrived, he stood at the door, hesitant but resolute. "I don't want to make things harder for you," he said, "but I can't pretend I don't care." I sighed, stepping aside to let him in. "Ryan, we've been through this." "I know," he said, his voice steady, "but you deserve to be happy, and I can see that you're not." His words cut deep, striking at the core of my reality. He wasn't wrong. My marriage felt hollow, like a shell of what it once was, and Ryan's presence, however complicated, filled a part of me I hadn't realized. Was empty. But acknowledging that felt like stepping onto a path I could never step back from. "This isn't about what I deserve," I said firmly. "It's about doing the right thing." Ryan nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "I just needed you to know how I feel." After that night, I resolved to focus on my marriage. Mark and I planned a weekend getaway to reconnect, hoping to reignite a spark that had long since dimmed. But the distance between us felt insurmountable. Every attempt at conversation fell flat, every gesture felt forced. And through it all, I found myself thinking about Ryan more than I wanted to admit. By the time we returned home, it was clear something had to change. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, torn between the responsibilities of my marriage and the emotions I couldn't shake. Eventually, Ryan and I found a way to maintain a connection without crossing the boundaries we'd set. Our bond remained strong, but we both understood where the line had to be drawn. It wasn't easy. The emotions were raw, the feelings complicated, but it was necessary for both of us. Lesson 1: The importance of boundaries. Boundaries are the invisible lines we set to define acceptable behavior and protect our relationships, values, and emotional well-being. In Lauren and Ryan's story, the lack of clear boundaries created a situation where emotions took precedence over reason. While Lauren repeatedly emphasized the need for boundaries, the underlying emotional tension between her and Ryan made it difficult to enforce them consistently. This scenario teaches us that boundaries must not only be set, but also upheld, even when emotions complicate the situation. Without firm boundaries, it becomes easier to cross lines that should never be blurred, leading to guilt, confusion, and potentially irreversible harm to relationships. For Lauren, understanding the difference between acknowledging emotions and acting on them was crucial. While feelings are natural and often uncontrollable, actions are a choice. By maintaining boundaries, she ultimately avoided making decisions that could have destroyed her family and her sense of self-respect. This lesson applies to everyday life as well. Whether in personal relationships, professional settings, or family dynamics, setting boundaries is an act of self-respect and mutual care. It protects not only our own emotional health, but also ensures the well-being of others involved. Lesson 2. Facing emotional voids in relationships. Lauren's emotional vulnerability stemmed from the distance in her marriage. Her husband, Mark, had become detached and consumed by work, leaving Lauren feeling unseen and unvalued. This emotional void made her susceptible to Ryan's attention and affection, which filled a gap she hadn't fully acknowledged before. This situation underscores the importance of addressing emotional voids in relationships rather than ignoring them. Emotional neglect doesn't always stem from malicious intent. Often, it's a byproduct of life's demands, miscommunication, or unmet expectations. However, leaving these issues unaddressed can create a disconnect, leaving room for external temptations and complications. Lauren's experience shows us that when emotional needs aren't met, it's essential to communicate openly with your partner and seek solutions together. Counseling, quality time, and honest conversations can bridge gaps that might otherwise widen over time. In a broader sense, this lesson is about self-awareness. Recognizing when you're emotionally unfulfilled allows you to address the root cause rather than seeking fulfillment in potentially harmful ways. By addressing emotional voids early, we can strengthen relationships and prevent situations where emotions override judgment.